I'm on. Hey, what's going on? Okay, I'm gonna do one more today. I'm sweaty, but I'm in it to win it. This question is from _Zandthreerson. Zanderson? I see what you did with the 3, that backwards Z, you sneaky little bugger. All right. How would you cue someone new to technique to sink the hips early enough in the jump? Right? Sink the hips early. First of all, why? Why would we want to sink the hips, right? It's a really common question as of recently because we've talked a lot more about it. The reason we play around with hip height is really to help us preserve acceleration and also to establish kind of power points of the jump early enough that we optimize the time that we spend on the ground. Okay, that's a very long, fancy way of saying we're trying to avoid shit that looks like this, right? Up and down. Why do we want to avoid up and down, right? I think one of the most common feedbacks I get is, well, why wouldn't I have the athlete do a more dramatic drop? Don't we want to tap into the stretch reflex of the muscle? Well, the stretch reflex of the muscle is going to work regardless of whether we fall aggressively at the end of the jump or not, right? Because we're putting force into the tissue, so they are lengthening and they will shorten reflexively. We want to optimize our acceleration and our ground contact time so that we don't waste energy, right? Jumping high is less the person that produces the most force, but the person who loses the least amount of force. How's that one for the books, right? So hip height then becomes important to establish because we're trying to get to the low point of the hip before we hit this plant block foot sequence. The lowering tends to happen through the penultimate into the plant. We see this kind of lowering. And I'm going to make sure that we put some stuff up on the screen here so you can see that happening in real time. Some of the biggest changes we see are on helping athletes manage that hip height. So how do we change it? How do you get better at establishing hip height if you're brand new to technique, right? Do I cue myself somehow in my approach to, okay, lower, lower, lower? Well, that comes with time. So we start off by really just getting the athlete low. We say, okay, let's get in a bit of a squatty stance. Lower the hips. And we're going to shorten your approach way the hell down. I mean, we're going to take all this kind of messier stuff happening initially, and we're going to focus on the last couple steps. So we might have you just from here push through that penultimate and work on popping off the ground there in our push punch drill. Or we might just get you with some step push punch. So we've got your hips lowered. We're going to step, push, punch. And what we're looking at as coaches and what you can look at as athletes is with a little bit of video from the side angle, we're mapping the hip. Where is it going? So if I'm starting here and I'm doing a step push punch, am I able to maintain my low hip height, my low point, through the push, into the plant, into the block? Once we can start managing that within a very close range, we start to build efficiency, right? Because we're putting ourselves in a good, powerful position early enough. So the long story short is, in order to work hip height and get better at managing hip height, is you need to start training hip height from a static, fixed start. Once it gets better and you get a little bit more natural with that movement, you can start incorporating more of your approach, and the hips will generally lower as you get closer to your penultimate stride. They start to lower naturally because you've gotten proficient with creating that power through the penultimate from a lowered hip height. Everything takes time, right? The most beautiful statues in the world were chiseled over time. They weren't just slapped up and perfect. So we have to chisel away your inefficiencies. We have to make you a more proficient mover, and that requires lots and lots of patterning. That's all I got to say about that. Hey, if you want your questions answered here on Project Pure Athlete by The Jump Guy, go to our Instagram right here, and ask the questions, and then I'll answer them. Maybe, or you'll get in here, try anyway. Comment below, like all the things that you do on videos, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ready? COVID high five. Let's get it. Bye.